Hi, I'm Jessa Gelt, BMI's Executive Director of Creative, and today we are in the studio with BMI songwriter, producer, and multi-instrumentalist Carter Lang, a 6-time BMI Award winner with 22 Billboard-charting songs, including 5 Billboard #1s, and a 6-time Grammy nominee, who's worked with artists including Sway Lee and Post Malone, Doja Cat, Lil Nas X, and most recently SZA on her 2022 hit album, SOS. You've been longtime collaborators with SZA and had a significant impact on her highly acclaimed 2017 debut studio album, Control. How did you two initially meet?
SZA and I met in Chicago, and we met at a studio called Classic Studios. I met her in the Studio Classic, and I brought a synthesizer upstairs, and we started jamming on the synth, and I brought my guitar up there, and my friend Peter Cottontail and I were just sort of like going to different studios that day. So I just happened to run into her. I was just listening to what she was creating. I kind of like walked in on a record that she was already making, and I just like picked up my instrument and started like playing along. And we caught a vibe and started talking about music and just like feeling this sort of like synchronicity was starting to happen just between our interests and like just our bubbly nature. And she called me back the next day to pop by the studio because she wasn't from Chicago. She's like, hey, I don't really, I'm just out here. Like, I would love to make music with you. Came by after I had dinner with my parents, and she's like, hey, I want you to play in my band, but I don't know if we could squeeze it or what we could do. And I was like, it's okay. Like, I'll be around. She called me the day before Lollapalooza and just like, hey, come to the rehearsal spot. And then I went to the rehearsal spot and then brought the band and her back to my studio spot in Chicago, and we vibed out. And like, that was when we really like got into it, is when we had that performance together and we got to bond on stage. My friend Stix was playing drums, and I got acquainted with Paul and Kaylee, the other band members. And that's what really kicked it off. Like, the studio was just kind of an intro to being like, hey, we're speaking the same language and excited to work. And we're just like very curious people.
Following the incredible success of Control, how did you approach working on her follow-up album, SOS, in 2022?
After tour, I finally like settled into LA. So for me, I like actually had a home base in LA versus like in Control. It was like always like she'd rent an Airbnb, I'd rent a car. We'd like pull herself up in like Westlake Studio or this different studios like that and really like be like stuck together and like figure out like the best symbiosis in the creative process. And we'd like, Ty or Cody and I would like make different instrumentals, and we'd go in the other room and just let her cut and just do her thing as long as she wanted to, and just like let her take her time with the track. And then we'd be in the other room making something or adding onto something. And that was like our vibe. Control really connected us all together and created these like friendships and these relationships that are super strong. Like spending all this time with we became like a band. And that like set us up for being able to be this connected for the next album, because we might not all be, we weren't all in the same place. Like Ty was living here, Cody's here, Sis is there, we're all over the place. New peeps are coming to the equation here and there, and she's like, there's more demand on her for like her shows and different things she's gotta do. So like, for me, I felt a lot of comfort having my space in LA, being so close to the activity, but I could really just be separated and work on what I want to work on. And also being able to host different jams with close friends or new friends or whatever the vibe is, and just like plop people down on a chair with an instrument and get everything going. Like having that type of ability really like helped shape the opportunity for these instrumentals to arise, and for things that would really like attract her to wanting to like put down her thoughts in the moment or what she's been holding up, or just creative inspiration right there. But yeah, this studio helped a lot.
When collaborating with an artist like SZA, how do songs usually start?
They start from like an organic place. You're just sitting with a friend, you're creating something, just 2 people, maybe 1 person, maybe 4 people. She might be, 1,000 miles away on tour or something. We're making these instrumentals with these little clips. It doesn't always happen like in the room. It's like we make a clip of music, we might send it back and forth to each other, just trying to get it to a place where it's gonna put you in this sort of meditative state to just really just wanna lay it down. Not too many changes, not building it up so it's this whole perfect like layout. It's like, here's just something just to make sure like, we can like get some emotion out of it. So like usually pretty minimal pieces. The best is like to pull up to the studio and play some stuff, play a list of things, and just see what she gravitates towards and let her just sit with it, like, and just being really patient with each other has always been the name of the game. I'm like kind of more of an eager person, but I want to be able to like, you know, contain that so that someone feels like they have their creative space. And with SZA, I learned a lot about, for like, you know, honing in my patience with myself when I'm playing. And then being on stage together really helped. For her and I just being able to like, just be in front of so many people or rehearse and just like have this sort of this connectivity that we're just doing everything without having to like discuss what we have to do next. We know what our role is on stage. It's like when we're in the studio, we're kind of evoking the same energy, even if we're like completely separate. If I'm making something, I have to think about how is it going to translate to the headphones, to the stage, not like over analyzing it, but just kind of making sure like, yo, is this going to be like, what type of moment is this going to provide people or myself as a listener? And I know that if I'm thinking that way too, like thoughtfully like that, that she's gonna echo that with her lyrics in her song.
Any memorable moments from making SOS?
For sure. Like the beginning parts, like when we started Good Days and I was scrolling through a bunch of ideas that I had. This is in 2018 and it was just a random day that was my birthday. She happened to want to get in the studio. I played her this instrumental that two of my friends started. I had no involvement in it. I just was like scrolling and I hit the thing and she liked it. And I was like, well, here goes. She wrote a whole thing to it. And then I was able to like incubate it for as long as she wanted to hold it down. I never like pressed her to finish it. And then I got to finish that up like during the beginning of COVID, everything shut down and I had like the instrumental. She's like, it's time for me to finish this track. Like I got to go in on that. That was super cool. But other like notable moments were just like some of the different jams, like for Blind, myself, Rob Beisel, Yuli, and Will Miller, when we were just jamming here and we came up with all these things that had a bit of like a twinge of orchestral classical feel, but was completely, it felt like it was from another planet. Playing the Kill Bill instrumental for her after playing like, 5+ ideas and like, she's not really trying to hear too many ideas, nor would I if I was in her position. It's gonna like confuse your brain because you might want to get on every idea, but you're just searching for the one that fits you in that moment. So I was like, man, I gotta play you this one little thing. I don't know. I played it at the end of the whole like cycle of stuff we were playing. And she was like, okay, hummed along to it, made a whole thing to it. It was Kill Bill.
Do you have a favorite song?
Honestly, something about F2F was like a challenge that provided like a lot of a release for me. Something about that song, just like I could like headbang to it or something. Something about it just made me lose, like, I was like, wow, it's like out of body. Listen to it and be like, okay, cool. I mean, it takes you there, but by the end of the song, when the solo comes back around and there's like this fake out, and we got to like try weird stuff with it. Like Rob and I sat there and just tried all our little pieces and I was like, yo, this is great. Like having the opportunity to make a song that's like big and anthemic and like still like has this nostalgia that like Sos and I grew up with, growing up in the 90s and just like, but not it trying to be too 90s. So it was just like, it was a fun, that song, that F2F song was like really a trip. Kill Bill to me was one of the most exciting ones too, because it was like finally a track that I felt like showcased like what my natural frequency was at, like sonically. The instrumental began when I received a small piece of music from my friend Rob Beisel. It was the initial chord progression. And I incubated that piece of music for a week or so, tried a few different drum patterns on it until I arrived at something that was definitely had a little bit more of a swing than I initially anticipated. I thought it was going to be a little bit more of like a straight feeling, maybe like digital, like trap drums or whatever the vibe I was trying, but then it ended up being something completely different. And then I heard I could add live drums to it. It just felt like, okay, now I hear a new textural palette and kind of like even like a deserty, rattlesnakey type of thing. And it wasn't even called Kill Bill, like the name of the beat was like Igloo. So I don't know, she obviously felt that in the music and she threw it down.
What would you say is the criteria for a fruitful collaboration?
I guess just communication with each other and patience in the process. It's like a very, everyone's working kind of at their own pace and we're not always working in the same room together. So it's really being able to say, hey, I'm going to take initiative and I'm going to hold myself accountable to getting this thing done without someone putting the fire to my butt or something, and like vice versa, having the same, expectations, silent expectations of each other. Once we started to get like some material, figuring out, hey, what are like some of like what are some of the things that like Sos wants to do on this album, like some of the areas that she wants to do. So we'll have to collaborate together and figure those things out. For this album too, like some of the best stuff arose from just a random moment, like capturing a random moment in a 300-minute jam or something and looping it up and it just becoming that thing. But I think especially for this album too, just being in communication, because we're not all in the same room working all at the same time. It's not like every session's planned or like communicated to each other. It's like we'll just have to sort of like just drift. And yeah, it was a very sort of, the album was like a river. It just like kind of flowed through stuff as it wanted to and just sort of pushed away the rubble and loose areas and just made its way. And whoever was down to be on the raft and hold on, that was who worked on the stuff together, you know? There's no one else I could do that with but her.
How would you describe your songwriting or production style?
Melodic doodling. No, I'm kidding. My production style is definitely based around harvesting from these spontaneous moments when maybe it's like the first time you press a key on the synth and it just sort of gets you. Stuff that isn't necessarily like, you know, a special progression or something. It's really just finding something that just is evocative. I don't know, it's really always changing. I also really enjoy recording people sometimes more than I enjoy playing the instrument myself. I learned a lot about what sounds are working together, and I'm able to take a step back and hear the whole thing and sort of like maybe guide a friend. And that's something I've only been able to do like recently in the last 3 years. Having the space I'm in now is like a practice space for the next space and the next space. So I think that it's really been like less about me in this album and more about like how I'm able to work with others and just like be really supportive and be accountable to each other, even if there isn't like, you know, even if the reward for it is completely like, you don't know, you know? So that's my style right now is really like recording with people and treating myself how I would want to treat others that are here and just making it nice and making the setup fun and exciting.